Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take the overwhelming noise of modern information, stack up your sources, and extract the high-value insights you need to be instantly well-informed.
Today, we are diving deep into the DNA of digital excellence. We're cracking the code on why some digital experiences, whether it's the app you use every morning or that critical multi-thousand-dollar B2B platform, feel smooth, intuitive, and almost like magic.
And why others just feel like wading through concrete.
Exactly.
Our mission today is, well, it's a shortcut to understanding why certain apps and websites cause immediate frustration. We're taking your sources on expert design principles, specifically the universal laws of usability heuristics, and we're pairing them with this really powerful philosophy that drives the best modern products. The clarity-first mindset.
Right. The core problem we face in the current software landscape isn't just about building powerful features. Everyone can build features. It's about ensuring those powerful features are usable.
Because if they're not usable, they don't really exist for the customer.
Precisely. If a system is functionally brilliant, but impossible to navigate or understand, that brilliance is locked away. It just leads to friction, support tickets, and ultimately churn. So today, we're handing you the foundational framework, Jacob Nielsen's canonical 10 heuristics, that product managers, expert designers, and frankly serious investors use to spot and diagnose these flaws before they become major liabilities.
And we're drawing heavily on established principles from Jacob Nielsen and the Nielsen-Norman Group, which is, it's the absolute bedrock of UX research for decades. But we're marrying that legacy knowledge with practical application insights inspired by companies that had to scale complexity, like Intercom, especially around their work on information architecture and achieving absolute clarity.
And the outcome for you, the listener, is immediate and practical. By the end of this dive, you will possess a PM-level lens to critique any digital screen you interact with.
Right. You'll stop saying, this website feels clunky, and start saying, this violates Heuristic 3, user control and freedom.
That is a power shift. A complete power shift.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we get into the 10 rules, we really need to set the stage. What are we actually talking about when we say usability heuristics? Let's lay down the foundational terms, because I think this is where a lot of the confusion can begin.
Absolutely. Setting the terms straight is the critical first step. We have 3 interconnected core definitions here that serve as the foundation for everything we're about to discuss.
Okay.
First, usability. People often confuse usability with utility. Utility is, does the product do what I need it to do?
Can it perform the function?
Yes, but usability is, how easily can I use the product to achieve that goal? It's formally defined as how effectively, efficiently, and satisfactorily a user can achieve their goals in a system. It's a triple measure.
I like that distinction, effective, efficient, and satisfactory. It's not just about task completion, right? It's about how that task felt. Did I check out without needing a 4-minute tutorial?
Was it quick?
And did I feel in control and good about the process? It feels like you need all 3, the trifecta.
Precisely. Efficiency matters immensely, but user satisfaction, that feeling of competence and control, is often what determines long-term adoption and retention.
Okay, so that's usability. Next up, a heuristic. This is a term used outside of design as well, right?
It is, yeah. A heuristic is simply a rule of thumb, a guiding principle that's been developed from experience. It's not a strict, rigid, immutable law like a law of physics.
So not a commandment carved in stone.
Not at all. It's a guiding principle pointing towards generally good solutions that have proven true across, thousands of different contexts.
Okay, so it's like a best practice based on observed human behavior, like always structure your pricing page to show 3 tiers is a kind of sales heuristic. It often works, but it's not universally required.
That's an excellent analogy. And finally, putting them together, usability heuristics are a small, high-level set of these design principles. The set we are focusing on, Jacob Nielsen and Rolf Mullich's 10, are used as a diagnostic tool.
A diagnostic.
Yes. They allow an expert to quickly check any interface to spot common, predictable issues that human behavior dictates will cause friction. The Nielsen-Norman Group explicitly recommends these 10 as the default set for any expert evaluation, precisely because they are high-level enough to apply to a 1990s desktop application or a 2025 AI chatbot interface, yet specific enough to diagnose real technical problems.
That sets the technical baseline for us. But let's jump into the philosophical overlay, the sort of strategic glue that holds these principles together in the modern era. This mindset shift we're calling clarity first.
Clarity first is, it's the ultimate evolution of usability. It's a design principle that demands instant obviousness. The goal is to eliminate guesswork, eliminate hesitation by making it immediately clear what a screen is for, what matters most on that screen, what the user should do next.
If you have to pause and think, clarity has failed.
That's it. If you're scrolling unnecessarily, if you're squinting at the screen, clarity has failed.
And this principle really gained traction as product teams realized they were just drowning their users in features.
Right. As their software grew more and more complex, the information architecture, how everything was organized, just started to buckle under the weight.
That's right. Intercom, for instance, talked extensively about designing for clarity when they hit a complexity wall. As they added more product lines, more automation tools, more advanced settings, their existing navigation, which might have started as 5 simple items, just ballooned into a confusing mess.
Right.
They realized that adding more features without managing the complexity of the structure was actively reducing the overall value of the product.
So the key wasn't to remove features, but to simplify the structure surrounding them.
Exactly. The core themes they tackled were simplifying the primary navigation, making sure the most important high-frequency tasks were easily accessible or surfaced, and radically reducing the cognitive load on the user.
And cognitive load, that's just the mental energy you have to spend to figure things out, right? Right. What the system is doing, what I should click next, how to achieve my ultimate goal.
I think of it this way. If I'm looking for the billing page and it's labeled Administration Console, that 3-second pause while I have to translate that internal jargon into my expected mental model. That's cognitive load.
And that's a clarity failure. The clarity-first mindset provides a hard filter for this. It really boils down to 4 essential, practical questions that you, the listener, can apply instantly to any screen you are looking at. If a screen is truly clear, it has to instantly and unambiguously answer these.
Okay.
First, where am I? The user needs immediate orientation. Is this the settings page, the invoice history, or the dashboard? If a user lands on a page, the title, the breadcrumbs, the selected navigation state, it must all align instantly.
Second, what can I do here? What are my options, and are they clearly prioritized? Am I viewing data, editing something, creating something new? If I see 3 buttons, which one is the main action?
Then third, what should I do next? This is the call to action imperative. If there's a goal for you on this screen, completing a form, viewing a report, submitting a payment, the main button should make that goal totally obvious and easy to click.
And fourth, which I think builds essential user confidence. What will happen if I do it?
Yes. Is the consequence of clicking submit or archive or delete clear and predictable? Users hesitate if the action feels like a black box.
It's the anxiety of the unknown click.
Absolutely. So if you, the user, cannot answer those 4 questions quickly, you have an immediate and critical clarity problem that will manifest as user anxiety and inefficiency.
That framework gives us the compass. Now, let's get into the map. Nielsen's 10 Heuristics. This is the PM's diagnostic toolkit, the list that allows you to stop guessing about why a design feels bad and start methodically identifying the flaws by name.
We transition into the canonical list now, providing the depth that a serious heuristic evaluation requires. And remember, these principles are explicitly recommended by the Nielsen-Norman Group as the default for any expert review, meaning they are universally applicable.
Okay, so let's start with the most basic necessity for any successful digital interaction. The system just acknowledging the user exists.
Heuristic 1, visibility of system status. The core principle here is that the interface must constantly keep the user informed about what is happening with clear, timely, and appropriate feedback.
Silence is terrifying.
Silence or ambiguity from the system is absolutely terrifying to a user.
I think we've all clicked a button on a slow system and immediately clicked it again because we weren't sure the first click registered. That moment of hesitation is a direct failure of this heuristic.
Exactly. And the feedback needs to be appropriate to the action. For quick action, like saving a sentence, a brief confirmation toast that appears and fades is sufficient. But for a longer process, like uploading a massive file or generating a report, you need granular detail.
Let's talk about that granular detail. A basic spinning circle just isn't enough for a task that takes 90 seconds. What are the best-in-class examples here?
Best-in-class examples don't just say loading, they provide context. A loading spinner that says, saving changes, processing payment information, or generating report, this may take up to 45 seconds.
Oh, that's huge. Just managing my expectation of time.
It's crucial. And they address the latency issue, honestly. If a progress bar sits at 99% for 30 seconds, it's misleading and it violates the user's trust. A more sophisticated system might break the process down. So step 1, data extraction completed. Step 2, calculation in progress.
Right. That context is everything. Think about an e-commerce order status. It should tell you precisely where your item is. Shipped on delivery truck, ETA 3 p.m. today, not just in transit.
Exactly. The clarity takeaway here is that users should never, ever wonder if their action worked, if they need to click again, or if the system is frozen. The system has to be a clear, constant communicator, the PM action item. When reviewing a flow, insist on defining the exact feedback state for every click at every latency period over 1 second.
Okay, speaking of clarity, that brings us right to number 2, which is all about how we structure our language and design elements to feel natural to the user.
Heuristic 2. Match between system and the real world. This means your interface must use language, concepts, and ordering that align with the user's existing mental model and their real-world expectations. You have to ruthlessly avoid internal company-specific jargon.
This is a massive failure point in complex B2B software, where products are often designed by engineers who use acronyms and internal database labels. I mean, if I am building a financial report, I expect to see revenue, not aggregate F15 transactions.
The gap between the product's language and the user's language is where all the friction starts. I mean, think about the simple act of deleting. We use a universally understood bin or trash can icon. If a designer decided to use a vacuum cleaner icon for delete because they thought it looked cooler,
They're being clever.
they violated this heuristic and forced the user to pause and learn a new, unnecessary convention. It's a waste of their time.
And the structure of information matters, too. If I'm submitting an expense report, I expect to enter the amount, then the vendor, then attach the receipt. If the system reverses that order, it just feels fundamentally wrong because it breaks the real-world flow.
Yes. The strategic clarity point here is that jargon and mismatched models actively block clarity. That label, Segment V2 Workspaces, might make perfect sense to the internal product operations team, but it forces the external user to spend valuable cognitive energy decoding or guessing its function.
So the PM action is critical here.
It is. You must ruthlessly rename features using language validated by the user. If your internal system calls it a containerized deployment unit and your customers call it a project, you have to call it a project. This requires putting ego aside and speaking the customer's language.
Okay, next up, the one that directly underpins user confidence, the ability to escape.
Heuristic 3. User control and freedom. Users must feel like the master of the system, not its captive. They need clear, easy, and visible ways to back out of unwanted states, including undo, redo, and cancel actions. Sometimes we call these clear exits.
And this is more than just hitting the browser back button, right? Because so many modern apps break the browser's native history.
It is so much more. It's about building in application-level safety nets. The gold standard is that brief undo toast message that appears after you delete an email or an item from a list. It acknowledges the destructive action, but gives the user a quick, frictionless way to reverse it without navigating away.
Right. But implementing undo functionality, I mean, that can be a huge engineering lift, especially in complex transactional systems like banking or large-scale data manipulation. So how does a PM argue for that investment over a shiny new feature?
That's where the constraint discussion comes in. The argument isn't about delight. It's about reducing cost and increasing conversion. If a user deletes something accidentally in a system without undo, their next action is to contact support. That's a direct financial cost.
Or worse, they just leave, they churn.
Exactly. Confidence is clarity. Users are far more confident exploring, experimenting, and ultimately using more of the system when they know they can't permanently break things or lose an hour's worth of work. The PM priority here is to insist on clear exits and undo functionality, especially for any destructive action or any long-form content creation. It's an essential investment in trust that pays back in a reduced support burden.
All right, number 4 tackles the question of learning and muscle memory. Consistency.
Heuristic 4. Consistency and standards. This means following both platform conventions, like using the standard gestures or menu locations for the operating system, and internal conventions. Similar elements have to look and behave similarly everywhere within your product.
So if a button that starts a flow is green and labeled Start on your dashboard, it must be green and labeled Start on your settings page. You can't just change its color to blue and label it Proceed.
You can't. And if links are sometimes underlined blue and sometimes just slightly bolder gray text, that's a massive failure.
Because the moment a user has to pause and wonder, is this clickable or is it just text? That's friction.
That's the clarity death by 1,000 cuts. Every small inconsistency forces the user to stop and manually verify the pattern, taxing their attention unnecessarily. Consistency is the foundation of efficiency because it lets users develop muscle memory.
From a PM perspective, this often clashes with the desire for aesthetic differentiation. A designer might want a unique visual style for a new feature, ignoring the internal design system or the component library.
And the PM has to be the ruthless enforcer of that design system. The PM checklist item for consistency is simple but crucial. When your team proposes a new UI pattern, the first question has to be, do we already have an existing component in our library that we can reuse? Can we adhere to the existing standard?
Right. New patterns need to be justified by new functional requirements, not just because it looks cool.
Precisely.
Heuristic 5 is the shift from reacting to errors to preventing them entirely.
Heuristic 5, error prevention. The best defense is one that stops the user from making the mistake in the first place. You must design the system to make users less likely to make mistakes and catch issues before they escalate into full, frustrating errors.
So we see two forms of this, right? Slips and mistakes.
We do. Slips are unconscious errors, like accidentally clicking the wrong button. Prevention for slips includes things like confirmation steps before you permanently delete an account, or disabling the submit button until all the required fields are valid.
And mistakes are conscious errors when the user thinks they are doing the right thing, but they're actually wrong.
Exactly. Prevention for mistakes involves clear guardrails and smart defaults. The smart default example is vital. If you have a bulk email tool, the primary button should default to the safest option, Send Test Email, forcing the user to consciously select high-impact Send to all customers option only after clear confirmation.
This principle, more than almost any other, demonstrates real strategic value. Clear guardrails reduce that pervasive mental clutter. The PM priority here has to focus error prevention efforts on flows with the highest potential business or user impact payments, irreversible bulk data changes, or authentication flows.
If a user can lose money or data, the prevention must be bulletproof.
All right, moving to 6, this is tied directly back to minimizing that cognitive load we were just talking about.
Heuristic 6. Recognition rather than recall. The directive here is simple. Minimize the user's memory load. Make options, instructions, and information visible on the screen so users can recognize what they need, rather than being forced to remember it across screens or sessions.
We've all been there. You're filling out a form, and you have to click back to a previous screen just to remember the exact spelling of a customer name or a specific project ID. That break in flow is pure recall failure.
If the system forces you to memorize data points, it has failed this heuristic. Instead, the system should surface that information. Good examples are showing recent searches or suggested queries as user types.
Or pre-filling recently used values, like the last filter set I applied to a dashboard.
Yes, or just using readable labels like upload profile picture instead of a cryptic abstract icon.
But how do we balance showing everything for recognition with minimizing noise, which is heuristic 8? If I show all my previous searches, that could just clutter up the interface.
That's the PM trade-off. You have to prioritize relevant recognition. You might use dynamic display, show the last 3 recent inputs, or show contextual information only when the user's cursor is active near the field. The clarity takeaway is that users should never have to mentally juggle information across screens.
So the PM action is to push for key information to be shown in context.
Exactly. If a user is viewing an account usage report, the system should show their plan limits. Usage is 78%, 3 GB remaining, right there next to the usage data, not force them to navigate to a separate dusty settings page to recall the limit.
Okay, Heuristic 7 addresses the inevitable complexity that comes with power, designing for both the beginner and the expert.
Heuristic 7, flexibility and efficiency of use. A system has to offer efficient paths for the power user without confusing the novice. You need accelerators, shortcuts, and customization options.
So for the novice, the primary path needs to be clear, linear, and well-labeled.
Right, but for the expert who performs that task 50 times a day, we need keyboard shortcuts. The rise of the CTRL-CMD plus K command palette, allowing users to type commands instead of navigating menus, is a prime example of an expert accelerator that is easily ignored by the novice.
Or think of spreadsheets. A novice can use the menu to select sum, but an expert just types sum.a1.a10 instantly. That's flexibility. But what about customization?
Customization is critical for efficiency. Saved filters, saved report views, the ability to reorder dashboard widgets, or allowing bulk actions on lists like selecting 50 items and then hitting archive. These are all accelerators that save frequent users an incredible amount of time. If the expert can't go faster, they will eventually look for a competitor who can offer that efficiency.
So the clarity takeaway is that clarity does not mean dumbed down.
Not at all. It means the base path is obvious and the expert path is efficient. The PM trade-off here is tucking advanced options behind clear affordances, a button labeled Advanced Search or a More Filters dropdown. They are visible and available if sought, but they're not cluttering the core experience for the majority of users.
Okay, now for the principle of ruthless minimalism, the signal-to-noise ratio rule.
Heuristic 8, aesthetic and minimalist design. This is simple. Avoid irrelevant elements. Every single item on the screen competes for the user's attention, meaning the vital signal must absolutely outweigh the visual noise.
Clutter kills clarity. I mean, if I have 5 different alert banners, a promotion banner, a GDPR notification, a chat widget, a status indicator, and a feature announcement modal, I have no idea where to look first, and I will likely just dismiss them all.
Precisely. This means removing purely decorative elements from high-stakes or busy tasks. It means grouping related settings into 3 clear labeled sections instead of one ridiculously long, unstructured scrolling list. And it means using short, precise microcopy instead of large, flowery blocks of text.
The PM action here is perhaps the most difficult because it requires so much internal discipline. The PM has to hold regular design reviews where the central and often uncomfortable question is, what can we remove or hide by default without harming the core task or information access?
And if you cannot justify an element's presence by proving it aids the user's goal, it must go.
Moving to 9, this is the better defense, acknowledging that even with great prevention from Heuristic 5, errors still happen.
Heuristic 9. Help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. When an error does occur, the system must provide clear messages, always in the user's language, explain what happened, and most importantly, show the user how to fix it immediately.
The failure of this is universal. That dreaded generic pop-up that just says, error 404 or an unexpected error occurred, please contact administrator.
Which provides zero help, maximum anxiety, and guarantees a customer support ticket.
A total clarity failure point.
Absolutely. A successful error message provides the what, the why, and the what now. If a credit card is declined, the message shouldn't just say payment failed. It should say your card was declined. Insufficient funds. Please try another card, check the expiration date, or contact your bank.
And we need that inline validation too. Don't let me submit a form only to tell me 5 fields up that my phone number was formatted incorrectly. Tell me instantly right next to the field and highlight the exact error.
Yes. Even comforting proactive messages count. We couldn't save your changes because your internet connection dropped. We'll retry when you're back online. This removes the anxiety that their work is simply lost. The PM principle here is non-negotiable. Any error that reaches the user must be highly descriptive and actionable.
Okay, finally, number 10, the safety net for complex functions.
Heuristic 10. Help in documentation. Even if the UI is exceptionally well designed, you have to provide accessible help and documentation for complex or infrequent tasks. No system is so intuitive that sophisticated enterprise features never require context or explanation.
And this doesn't mean forcing users to navigate to a separate help center, right?
No, it means contextual help. Think of the small, non-intrusive tooltips explaining complex fields, or the presence of an embedded search bar for the help center within the app itself, or short, visual show-me walkthroughs for workflows that users might only tackle once a quarter, like annual tax reporting.
So the clarity takeaway is that clarity sometimes needs supporting material, especially in large enterprise platforms.
Right. And the PM action is to balance a self-explanatory UI with light, in-context help. You should only rely on external documentation for the deepest, most complex use cases, but the immediate questions have to be answerable right on the screen.
That is the complete toolkit, the 10 most critical rules for ensuring usability and clarity. And what's so powerful is that these 10 rules are not academic. They're directly actionable. But how do we take these rules and elevate them into major strategic product decisions? How does a PM use them to change the direction of a roadmap?
And that's where the clarity-first mindset becomes a strategy for the entire product manager's office.
Exactly.
When a product hits a growth ceiling, the failure is almost always systemic, and it's usually rooted in the information architecture, the structure, and organization of the product. If the IA is confusing, no matter how good your new features are, they will remain underutilized.
Oh, I hear PMs complain about this all the time. Feature X isn't getting adoption, only to find Feature X is buried 5 clicks deep under a menu labeled with some internal code name. This is where IA strategy becomes paramount.
Precisely. The core strategic ideas for structuring IA have to center around clarity. The first principle is to simplify navigation. and that's often achieved through rigorous grouping. This means grouping features based on the user's jobs to be done, not based on how your internal engineering teams are structured.
That is the common internal sin, isn't it? We see the product reflecting the org chart. If
Right.
we have three different internal teams, one handling subscription management, one handling compliance, and one for audit logs, the user ends up with three disparate sections in the navigation.
That are functionally all related to account health, but they're segregated by a bureaucratic structure.
Exactly.
Clarity demands you fight that tendency. You must reduce the number of top-level sections to a manageable, small set that makes sense to the customer's daily workflow. If you have 15 top-level navigational items, you've introduced choice paralysis, which is the enemy of clarity. The intercom example we mentioned earlier centered on exactly this. They had to move features out of cluttered settings menus and into primary, user-centric groupings like communication or data management.
The second idea is to make primary workflows obvious. How does data inform this decision?
Data on usage frequency is absolutely key. If 80% of your users come to the platform every day to perform three core tasks, say, checking their daily revenue, assigning a new task, or reviewing tickets, those tasks absolutely cannot be buried.
They have to be front and center.
The most common high-value tasks must be 1 or 2 clicks away from the main navigation. This requires using a clear hierarchy and naming that maps directly to how customers think about their day, not how you labeled the back-end database tables. If the most important action is to create a new client record, that new client button has to be prominent, visible, and persistent across relevant screens.
And the third strategic idea addresses future-proofing, which is so difficult when PMs are often just focused on the next 2-week sprint. Leave room for growth.
You have to design an IA that is resilient. It has to be able to gracefully handle new product lines, the inevitable introduction of AI features, or the expansion into new user roles without everything becoming chaotic. This requires foresight structuring navigation using categories that are broad enough to accommodate future functionality logically, rather than just tacking a new product onto an already crowded main menu.
So if your company is planning to introduce a financial forecasting feature next year, you shouldn't organize the current system purely around client contact. You need a broader analytics or reporting bucket that can logically absorb that future feature.
Absolutely, you need that scalable structure. And finally, when you're dealing with an existing, often frustrated user base, avoid big bang surprises.
Yeah.
If your current IA is confusing, fixing it with a sudden massive overhaul is almost always disruptive and often results in user backlash.
Right, you've just replaced one form of anxiety, which was confusion, with another, which is the shock of a complete redesign. So how should a PM approach this tactically?
You have to roll out changes progressively. Focus the redesign on clarifying the most confusing parts first, the core navigation and the highest friction flows. Keep familiar visual anchors, even if the underlying structure changes. Users rely so heavily on habit and location memory. Progressive clarity maintains trust.
Okay, now let's bring this discussion back to resource allocation and prioritization. This is the PM's daily reality. How do the principles of clarity drive the cold, hard decisions in the PM's office?
Well, clarity's impact on PM decisions is felt most acutely during prioritization meetings. Imagine you have a choice. Build the shiny new requested feature Z, or spend the same 2 sprints fixing the confusing information architecture and navigation a clarity fix.
Most stakeholders will always choose the new feature. It looks good on a PowerPoint slide. How do you, as a PM, sell the IA fix?
You sell it based on leveraged ROI. You argue that the clarity improvement unlocks usage across many existing features that were previously hidden, hard to access, or confusingly labeled.
Ah,
If you have 5 features that are only utilized by 10% of users because they are buried, fixing the IA to make them obvious and easy to find might instantly boost their adoption to 30%, which is a far greater return on investment than building a single new feature that will only get 5% adoption anyway.
it's strategic investment in usability debt.
It is. Furthermore, clarity affects scoping. The choice might be to narrow the scope of a feature release to make one core flow extremely clear, bug-free, and delightful, rather than shipping 3 confusing, half-clear flows. Quality of experience over quantity of features is a clarity-driven decision.
And finally, communication. When presenting roadmaps or designs internally, the PM should always lead with the clarity argument to tie it back to user value.
You have to frame the discussion around the reduction of friction. You say, this structural change improves clarity for the finance administrator on their monthly reconciliation by reducing the path from 6 clicks to 2 clicks, which we estimate will save 30 hours of administrative time per month. This makes clarity a measurable business goal, not just an aesthetic preference.
That brings us to the ultimate practical tool. We've covered the principles, we've covered the strategy. Now, let's give you a structured way to execute a heuristic evaluation. And most importantly, rate the severity of the flaws you spot.
Right. This section is the PM's structured output. When you practice a heuristic evaluation, you don't just generate a long, unstructured list of things that bother you. You categorize them by the principle they violate, and then you prioritize them based on business impact.
Let's break the screen down into 6 key categories for methodical analysis, ensuring we hit all 10 heuristics.
We start with orientation and purpose. This is where the 4 clarity questions are answered. Is the primary user goal obvious from the page title, layout, and primary action? Can I tell where I am using a clear selected state in the navigation or a breadcrumb trail? If the purpose is unclear, the user is lost immediately. This links to heuristic 1, visibility of system status, and that core clarity question, where am I?
Next, information and language. This is a critique of the copy and the nomenclature. Is the language the user's language, or is it filled with internal jargon? Is the visual hierarchy clear one, primary action, clear secondary actions, readable fonts? And what on this page is unnecessary, what can be removed? This links heavily to heuristic 2, match with real world, and heuristic 8, aesthetic minimalist design.
Then we analyze actions and flows. This is the functional critique. Can I easily undo or cancel my last action? Are dangerous, high-impact actions protected by confirmation or non-ambiguous copy? Crucially are the main actions, the buttons, links, menus, consistent in appearance and function with the rest of the product. This brings in heuristic 3, user control, heuristic 5, error prevention, and heuristic 4, consistency.
The 4th category is inputs and errors. This is the resilience test. If I make a mistake while entering data, will the system help me recover? Are the error messages clear and positioned directly next to the relevant fields? And on the prevention side, are users prevented from making obvious mistakes through smart defaults, real-time validation, or disabling impossible options?
That's heuristic 9, help users recover, and heuristic 5, error prevention, working in concert.
5th, we look at memory load and efficiency. Is the system requiring me to remember information between screens to complete a task? If so, why isn't that information carried over or shown in context? And can frequent users go faster? Are there shortcuts, bulk actions, or saved configurations available for power users?
Which covers heuristic 6, recognition versus recall, and heuristic 7, flexibility and efficiency.
And finally, help and reassurance. Is there just enough guidance where it's needed? Think small, non-obtrusive tooltips, clear hints, or helpful empty state copy. Do status messages and feedback reduce anxiety and build trust? Are progress indicators and confirmation messages clear and timely?
And that links to heuristic 10, help in documentation, and heuristic 1, visibility of system status.
Okay, now for the essential PM lens, classifying severity and impact. Once you've compiled your list of 50 flaws, you can't just present them all equally. You have to judge the importance of the flaws you spotted to help engineering and design prioritize the fixes.
Right, and PMs rate problems based on 3 crucial metrics. First, frequency. How often will a typical user actually hit this issue? An issue in the critical login flow is high frequency. An error on a niche administrative page accessed quarterly is low frequency. This directly impacts the number of users affected.
Second, impact. How bad is it when it happens? Does it result in a 5-second detour, lost time, financial loss, catastrophic data error, or does it lead directly to user churn? The magnitude of the consequence determines the impact score.
And third, recoverability. How easy is it for the user to fix the error themselves? If they can easily click undo or quickly re-enter the data because the error message guided them, recoverability is high. If they lose unsaved work, get locked out, or have to contact customer support, recoverability is low. And low recoverability dramatically increases the severity.
Okay, let's apply this modeling. Imagine we find a missing undo function, a heuristic 3 violation, in a content management system where users are writing long-form marketing copy. If they accidentally hit delete draft, the copy is gone.
Okay, let's rate that. Frequency. Well, if they are content creators, they use the system daily, so the frequency of using the delete button is high, though the accidental deletion event itself might be moderate.
Right.
Impact. Catastrophic. Losing hours of work means lost time, severe frustration, and a high likelihood of churn. And recoverability. 0. They have to rewrite the content from scratch.
So, based on catastrophic impact and 0 recoverability, that is immediately a critical finding, regardless of the moderate frequency that must be fixed immediately.
Right. Now consider a different flaw. A lack of consistency. Heuristic 4, where the date format on one report is MMDDYYY, and on another it's DDMMYY frequency. High, they see reports daily. Impact. Minor. It causes a moment of cognitive load and confusion, but no data loss or major workflow stoppage.
And recoverability is high. They can figure it out.
Exactly. They can eventually figure out which format is being used, so that shifts it right down to a minor Polish finding. It should be fixed during cleanup, but it doesn't halt the product launch.
This structured approach leads to the official classification of findings, often used in the Nielsen-Norman group style. Critical, must fix before launch, prevents core task completion. Major, fix soon, impacts task success for many users, causing significant frustration. And minor Polish, improves satisfaction but does not hurt core success.
This structure checking against the 10 heuristics, applying the 4 clarity questions, and then classifying severity based on frequency, impact, and recoverability is the full PM toolkit that ensures usability work is prioritized based on business value, not just subjective annoyance.
So let's synthesize everything we've covered. We started with the foundational idea of usability and the strategic imperative of the clarity-first mindset. We then deep dived into the 10 most powerful rules in UX design, complete with the practical trade-offs a PM has to consider.
The key final takeaway is understanding the role of heuristics versus empirical evidence. Heuristics are expert inspection. They are powerful tools used during design reviews to catch the obvious issues cheaply and early, before code is even written. They save resources by preventing avoidable mistakes.
But they are not the final word. They are a starting point.
Exactly. They are not a replacement for real-world validation. UX research methods like user interviews, usability tests, and analytics provide the crucial empirical evidence. For instance, user interviews help you understand their existing mental models and vocabulary, which then feeds directly into your application of Heuristic 2, the match between system and the real world.
And usability tests are the ultimate validator for your clarity assumptions. You measure success by looking at task completion rates, time on task, and error rates. Good PMs never rely solely on expert opinion. They use heuristics to quickly identify potential problems and then use empirical research to confirm the severity and find the most effective solution.
They use both inspection and evidence to manage friction. You now have the full framework, the definition of usability, the 4 pillars of clarity, and the 10 most powerful rules in UX design, complete with real-world examples and a practical checklist for prioritization that you can apply right now.
This raises an important question for you to mull over after this deep dive. If clarity is fundamentally about maximizing signal and minimizing noise, which ties into Heuristic 8, aesthetic and minimalist design, and we know that forcing memory recall is taxing, which links to Heuristic 6, what is the long-term ethical implication for designers when they intentionally hide complex, optional, but important information, say, granular privacy settings, detailed tracking information, or advanced pricing configurations behind highly clear and simple affordances?
And they do this knowing the user may never discover it because the immediate path to task completion is so streamlined. How do we balance perfect clarity for the primary, easy task with full, honest transparency for everything else? That tension between simplicity and completeness is a complex problem for the next generation of PMs to solve.
Think about that. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We hope this knowledge helps you instantly level up your ability to critique the digital world around you. We'll catch you on the next dive.